The apparent motive of the man charged with the murders prompts Benjamin Netanyahu to tell the UK its opposition to the war in Gaza is fueling anti-Semitism.
You're on the wrong side of justice. You're on the wrong side of humanity. And you're on the wrong side of history.
Tonight, we're live at the scene of the shootings, sparking global repercussions. In Gaza, the UN warns of a race against time to prevent widespread starvation, despite aid beginning to reach Palestinians. Also tonight, the Prime Minister defies critics and hands the Chagos Islands back to Mauritius.
There is no alternative. We will never gamble with national security.
Plus, 20 prisons will trial the chemical castration of sex offenders as part of plans to reduce reoffending. And we'll take a first look at tomorrow's front pages in our press preview from 10:30 right through until midnight. Good evening. Israel's Prime Minister has lashed out at Keir Starmer following the fatal shooting of a young couple who worked at Israel's embassy in Washington. Sarah Milgrim and Yaron Lishinsky were killed as they left an event at a Jewish museum in the US capital. A suspect was filmed shouting "Free Palestine" as he was arrested by police. He's been charged now with murder. Tonight, Benjamin Netanyahu linked the shooting to recent criticism of the war in Gaza by the leaders of the UK, France and Canada. He said the leaders were missing the simple truth about Israel's enemies and were on the wrong side of history. More on that in a moment. First, live to Washington, where officials are answering questions about the shooting.
Is that a different conference than the one, than the event? And could you tell us more about what that particular event is and another?
So we're still looking into the nature of the conference, we believe associated with his work, and we are contacting his employer and trying to figure out what the nature of his job was. We believe the reason for his flight was related to a conference for his work.
What's the nature of that work?
I don't have it at the top of my head.
And then the other question is, he seems to have been sort of stalking, I forgot what the word was, pacing in front of this event. And he seems to have had pretty easy egress in and out of the place. What does that say about the level of security, and are you investigating that for, and Mayor Bowser, are you considering increasing security around these sorts of events and institutions?
So regarding the movements of the subject, obviously still very much a part of the investigation, composite of collected videos, witness statements to put a full picture together before I would comment on any one particular act that he may or may not have been observed doing. As far as security goes for a private entity, I wouldn't comment on that. And as far as posture goes, I would defer to the mayor.
I think that the director is correct. This was not a event that falls into our special events category, where MPD and other government agencies have a stood-up posture. This was a relatively small event at a museum, so MPD or the government agencies wouldn't stand up additional resources unless they were requested or unless we got a call for service. More than that, I will say that we have had a local program and a federal program that have helped institutions, faith institutions, and others who have been concerned about violence, anti-Semitism, or other hateful speech and rhetoric. And very recently, we have issued grants, and we have issued grants over the last several years to those institutions to harden their security, add cameras, add additional security. And I believe that the museum has done some of those things.
I'm going to sneak one last thing in.
All right, I just want to follow up with this. We've been advised that the defendant has appeared in court. He's had an attorney appointed. He's been advised by the judge that he could be punished by death or by life. And, of course, we sought detention. The defendant waived his right to a detention hearing and concedes to detention. And right now a preliminary hearing is set for June 18th at 1 o'clock. So it is done.
One clarification, Mr. Jensen. You are not ruling out that this manifesto might have been written by this gentleman, right?
We don't know.
We don't know, and that's still very much a part of the investigation.
Okay. You good? All right. Thank you all. Yes, sir. One more.
Yes.
The authorities there in Washington, D.C. answering questions. I think that's US Attorney Jeanine Pirro there answering that last question. Well, more now on those criticisms of the UK from Israel's Prime Minister in the wake of those shootings in Washington, D.C. Our US correspondent Mark Stone has this report from the scene of the attack.
There are layers to the anguish, the anger and the shock of what happened here overnight. Through the morning, the crime scene became a focal point for a community to pause and reflect.
There's no doubt, there's fear.
The young couple shot dead here were due to be engaged next week. That is the deepest, most poignant layer to all this. They were diplomats Yaron Lachinsky and his fiancée-to-be, Sarah Milgram. They represented Israel abroad. And the tributes now being paid to them are reflective of the better world they sought. Sarah had an unwavering belief in dialogue, peace and equality, according to the charity she worked with. Tributes echoed by her father.
She was as close to perfect as any human could be. If there were more people like her in the world, we wouldn't be in the state that we're in today.
They were shot at close range as they attended an event for young diplomats in Washington's Jewish Museum. The suspected gunman, identified as 30-year-old Elias Rodriguez from Chicago, was restrained and detained moments later, but with a chant which hints at his motivation.
Free, free Palestine!
And with that, the other layers of this tragedy were exposed. An attack on the victims' community, their religion, their government. And from the top of that government, not a beat before he called what he saw.
As he was taken away, he chanted, "Free Palestine." This is exactly the same chant we heard on October 7th. On that day, thousands of terrorists stormed into Israel from Gaza. For these neo-Nazis, Free Palestine is just today's version of Heil Hitler. I could never understand how this simple truth evades the leaders of France, Britain, Canada, and others. They're now proposing to establish a Palestinian state and reward these murderers with the ultimate prize. You're on the wrong side of justice. You're on the wrong side of humanity. And you're on the wrong side of history.
Netanyahu's representative in Washington, for whom the two victims worked, was here to pay tribute to two brilliant people, but also to echo his prime minister's view, exposing the thorniest layer, the accusation that it is Israel's policies in Gaza which are increasing these anti-Semitic attacks.
Anti-Semitism is on the rise, not because of Israel's responding, but because of countries like France, who under this circumstance, now, tomorrow, plan to propose the unilateral recognition of a Palestinian state.
How would you suggest that foreign governments who are concerned, deeply concerned about the Israeli government's methods in Gaza, how should they be critical without, inciting violence, as you seem to be suggesting?
First of all, nobody is more concerned about conducting warfare than we are. We're the ones who are losing our soldiers. And if we could conduct a war without collateral damage, that would be wonderful. Do you know of any wars where there's no collateral damage?
Just for a few moments. Yes.
Donald Trump's Attorney General has made herself visibly part of all this. Clearly moved, she pledged to throw all the weight of American justice at the suspect and had this on the threat levels.
I can tell you security has been increased here as of last night. Our U.S. Marshals are working hand in hand to make sure the embassy is safe, our ambassador is safe. And again, please know, everything we know now, he acted alone. From everything we know now, this is an ongoing investigation.
Beyond here, just blocks away, the suspected gunman's appearance in court will be his first of many. The politics will swirl, the pain here will endure.
Tonight, we're live in Washington, D.C., in Jerusalem and in Downing Street. First to the scene of the shooting in the U.S. Capitol, our correspondent, Mark Stone. Mark.
Matt, that court appearance has now concluded, and he has been charged with 2 counts of first-degree murder of foreign officials, and the prosecution is seeking the death penalty. He will be appearing in court again in mid-June. So that is the court proceeding, the legal proceeding. But behind that, we are getting some really tragic, gruesome detail of what unfolded here last night. I'll warn you that what we have heard is graphic indeed, but it is important to share what happened, I think, because the whole shooting was caught on CCTV, we now know, and he didn't just shoot his 2 victims once. He shot them in the back as they left the party here last night. But as they fell to the floor, he shot them again multiple times. Sarah tried to crawl away, and he reloaded his handgun and shot them yet again before going into the building itself. It's not clear at this stage whether he intended to shoot more people inside the building. But as you heard from Pam Bondi, the Attorney General, speaking to me earlier, her view and the view of her department at the moment is that he was acting alone. They know that he arrived here in D.C. from Chicago on Tuesday. He bought the weapon a few years ago and brought it with him in his hold luggage on the aircraft, which is not illegal. But all of this will form part of this investigation, which, of course, will continue for some time.
Mark, thank you. Let's go live next to Jerusalem. Our international correspondent, Alex Rossi, is there. Alex, this evening we've heard Benjamin Netanyahu come out rather forcefully pointing the finger at the likes of the UK, France and Canada.
Yeah, definitely on the front foot, Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, a blistering, excoriating attack on what really are traditional allies of Israel. But remember, there is a context to all of this. As well as the war in Gaza, there is a propaganda war going on, and Israel is becoming increasingly diplomatically isolated. What Benjamin Netanyahu appears to be trying to do is reframe the narrative and also deflect by linking criticism from Western governments, Keir Starmer, Mark Carney and Emmanuel Macron of France, linking that to the murders that took place in Washington, reframing the narrative by effectively saying that criticism of Israel ends up siding with Israel's enemies. If you criticize Israel, you are empowering organizations like Hamas, which are avowedly trying to destroy the Jewish state. But I think the singular thing to take away from all of this is that the diplomatic rift over Gaza is deepening. It is getting worse tonight, not better.
Alex, thank you very much indeed. Let's go now to Downing Street. Our political correspondent Liz Bates is there for us this evening. What response, Liz, to all this from the Prime Minister and the government?
Well, on this particular moment, this statement from the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, no response yet from Downing Street, and I think that is really a reflection of how delicate and deteriorating the global politics of all of this is. We've seen a shift in tone from the UK alongside Canada and France in that joint statement this week when they called out the military operations. They called the images that were emerging from Gaza intolerable suffering. They demanded action, and they wanted to see Israel immediately allow humanitarian aid into the region. You see the response as it unfolds from Israel. I think there's a few reasons that we've got to this place. First of all, and I think most importantly, the images emerging from Gaza, global politics, warnings from the UN about the world not doing enough to prevent a genocide, but domestic politics as well. Huge amounts of pressure coming here from MPs of all sides, including many Labour MPs who have spoken publicly, called on the UK government and the Prime Minister to take a much tougher stance for the stopping of arms sales, sanctions, and just generally they want to see the UK take a much tougher stance on this issue. I think that has all culminated tonight in this moment. You know, when you look back and remember the beginning of this conflict and the UK standing side by side with Israel, saying it had a right to defend itself. Tonight, a very, very different scene when it comes to the diplomatic tensions, and we see those rising tonight, which is probably why we have not yet heard from Downing Street.
Liz, at number 10, thank you very much indeed. Well, in Gaza, the United Nations says aid groups have collected supplies carried by 90 of the 200 trucks which have entered the Strip since Israel began allowing in limited aid. But the UN says there is still a race against time to prevent widespread starvation there. A warning, this report from our Middle East correspondent Alistair Bunkle has distressing images right from the start.
Maya is 2 years old. She is starving and hugging herself in pain. Her mother puts a top on her tiny body. It is agony for her. She is one of the young victims of the blockade on Gaza.
Most stocks of food and baby formula have almost run out. Many are already depleted. The situation is catastrophic for pregnant women and children.
Some aid is now starting to get into Gaza and to the millions who need it. Only a little and not yet enough, but it is something. The United Nations said that 90 truckloads of aid has now been processed, including flour, sugar and food. Mina is 9 years old. The last time she had any bread, she says, was almost 2 months ago.
The border is closed and flour is unbelievably expensive. 2,000 to 3,000 shekels. We don't have that kind of money. No one can work anymore, so we can't eat.
As soon as food is available, there is a panicked scramble to get to the front and get some before it runs out. Fail, and the whole family might go without anything at all. The meal today was a bowl of plain rice.
Unbelievable prices. I'm one of the many here who can't afford anything. Not a tomato, not a cucumber, chili pepper. I just can't buy it. The prices in the market are just unbelievable. I've been at this soup kitchen since 8 a.m. waiting for a plate of rice or some cooked beans. My children sometimes go to bed without dinner. Sometimes they don't have breakfast. They wait for me to come back with something from the soup kitchen for lunch. If I couldn't get anything, then they won't have lunch.
These bags of flour have just arrived in Gaza. They'll be used to make thousands of loaves of pita bread. It is the first time this bakery's been working in months. The bread will immediately go to those most in need.
What we brought is definitely not enough, but we hope that the borders will remain open and we'll be able to bring more aid into Gaza. 2.2 million people of Gaza, almost everyone depends on humanitarian aid.
Ceasefire talks in Qatar have completely broken down. Benjamin Netanyahu is now demanding the relocation of Gazans to another country as one of his conditions to end the war. The aid blockade might be over. Gaza is now getting some food to eat. But peace, that remains a very distant hope. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News in Jerusalem.
The Prime Minister is insisting that his decision to sign over control of the Chagos Islands to Mauritius is in the national interest. The deal means the UK will pay Mauritius £101 million a year, and Keir Starmer believes it will allow the UK to continue to operate a vital military base on one of the islands. But he's being criticised by the Conservatives for giving up sovereignty of the territory and by people evicted from the islands who say it will now be harder than ever for them to return home. Our political correspondent Rob Powell has more.
Anger and outrage at the High Court from those who call the Chagos Islands home, urging the government not to give them up.
Keir Starmer decided to give the island to Mauritius. Is going to be a disaster for us. And I can assure you, a lot of people will die very soon, right? This is very important, and then we take it very, very seriously.
But the Prime Minister, flanked by military top brass, taking a different path.
I signed a deal to secure the joint UK-US base on Diego Garcia. This is absolutely vital for our defence and intelligence, and therefore for the safety and security of the British people.
Sir Keir Starmer insisting legal doubt over the future of the islands meant he had to act.
There is no alternative. We will never gamble with national security. So we have acted to secure our national interest, to strengthen our national security, and to protect the British people for many years to come.
Lawyers for these Chagossian women forced the Prime Minister to push back both his press conference and the signing of the agreement after a 2 a.m. legal order blocked the government. But in the High Court today, that claim was thrown out.
For us to be able to push through our message to the government, they are not treating us that we are human beings, we have rights. We are British citizens, yet our right doesn't count.
Campaigners here say this was always a David and Goliath battle, one Chagossian woman and her legal team trying to strike down a deal agreed by the US, UK and Mauritian governments. And while this legal action may have failed, the anger here won't fade quickly among people who feel let down and sold out by the country they've made their home.
Negotiations over these strategically important islands started under the previous Tory government. But with a cost of more than £100 million a year to the taxpayer to lease back the territory's military base, there's plenty of political opposition.
This is yet another example of Labour chaos. They cannot negotiate. Whenever they negotiate, Britain loses. We should not be paying to surrender British territory to Mauritius.
Campaigners here say they'll now carry on their fight for a strip of islands with great personal meaning, but big political importance too. Rob Powell, Sky News at the High Court.
Next, 20 prisons are to trial the use of chemical castration for sex offenders as part of a new attempt to reduce reoffending. It's all part of a review led by the former Justice Secretary David Gauke, who also says thousands of offenders should be released after serving just a third of their sentences to try to free up space in jails. Our social affairs correspondent Becky Johnson has the story.
The first time Daniel went to prison was for robbery, the second time for possession of a firearm. He got out early on a tag last summer as prisons neared capacity, but isn't convinced freeing more people sooner will keep them out of jail.
Would it have been easy to get involved in crime again?
And the honest truth, yeah, because anybody can reoffend. It don't matter if you're on a GPS tag or a normal tag. I do think is if you really want to cut prison numbers, what they need to do is start having more rehabilitation in jail.
He does think prison can be the wrong place for people who've committed less serious offences.
You're going in there with big time people, and they're enhancing what you know. They're telling you certain things that you didn't even know before now. So now you want a piece of their pie. So it's, if anything, sometimes jail is birthing bigger criminals, if that makes sense.
Thousands of prisoners will now get the chance to serve only a third of their sentence behind bars, with greater use of tagging to monitor them on release.
I honestly believe that victims will die because of these changes.
Rhiannon Bragg was stalked by her ex-partner. He turned up near her home and held her at gunpoint for 8 hours. Once he'd been released from prison on licence, she didn't feel safe until she found out he'd died.
I felt constantly at risk. What if he breaks those licence conditions? How long have I got? What will he do? So I never felt complete safety. I never felt free from fear.
These are massive changes to free up more space in prisons that will mean many more criminals are back out on the streets. People will be more reliant on the probation services and technology to work properly to keep them safe. For sex offenders, a pilot scheme offering voluntary chemical castration will now be expanded, with the government looking into whether it could become mandatory.
Doctors don't see themselves as agents of social control. If you were to try to make it mandatory here, it would have to be attached as a condition of parole, and if they refuse medication, to be brought back into prison. But as I said, we simply wouldn't support that. We don't think that's a doctor's role.
For communities plagued by petty crime, frustration that most sentences under a year will be scrapped. Surinder had to install security cameras to deter shoplifters. Now, thieves are unlikely to face jail.
They more or less look at you and laugh at you in the face that, you know, OK, you've caught us and now what can you do?
These changes, the real-world consequences of the prison crisis that will leave many feeling less safe on Britain's streets. Becky Johnson, Sky News, Birmingham.
At least 2 people have died and a number of others have been injured after a private jet crashed into a residential area in San Diego in California. The crash set fire to more than a dozen homes there. The authorities say they can't be sure that those who died were on board the aircraft, while police are investigating suggestions that the jet may have hit a power line. The UK has seen the largest drop in net migration in any 12-month period. The Office for National Statistics says the difference between the number of people entering and leaving the UK halved last year. It's 431,000. The ONS says the number of people coming on work and study visas has fallen following policy changes brought in by the last Conservative government. Doctors and teachers in England and Wales have been offered a 4% pay rise after the government accepted recommendations from pay review bodies. These salary increases are higher than the 2.8% the government originally budgeted for. But unions have threatened further strike action following the announcement, claiming the increases do not make up for historical pay freezes. To the latest now in our series of special reports from Haiti. Doctors in the capital, Port-au-Prince, have told Sky News that gang violence and displacement of the population is leading to malnourishment and a rise in cholera. The United Nations says ongoing gang violence in Haiti has displaced more than 1 million people. More than 5,600 people were killed as a result of gang violence in last year alone. And almost 6 million Haitians are going hungry and need food assistance. Healthcare is also a major problem, with local officials telling Sky News that 70% of medical facilities have been forced to close in the capital, Port-au-Prince. Our chief correspondent, Stuart Ramsey, and his team have travelled to the last remaining hospital in the part of the capital called Cité Soleil, known as the birthplace of Haiti's gangs. And a warning, Stuart's report contains pictures of malnourished children, which you may find distressing.
It's known as the birthplace of the gangs of Port-au-Prince. This section of town has been violent and dangerous for decades. It's called Cité Soleil, Sun City. Armed gang members check us out, but we're with a known driver. We're allowed to pass. Civil society doesn't function here. The gangs control everything and attack anything, even hospitals. The Fontaine Hospital, built in the slums of Cité Soleil, is the only medical facility still functioning. Without it, the people here would have no access to doctors or medicine. Founded 32 years ago by Jose Ulysse, it's a charity. In the cholera ward, he told me the increasing gang violence across Port-au-Prince and the chaos it's causing means people are herding into displacement camps. Cholera outbreaks are getting worse. For these cholera patients, their only hope of survival is here.
Cholera is always present, but there's a time when it's more. Lately, because of all the people in the displacement camps, there is a great deal of promiscuity and rape, and we have an increase in cases.
In the clinic, they give food to parents to feed their babies. These children are all malnourished. The giveaway sign, as always, their distended tummies. Poverty and insecurity combine to cause this. Like cholera, malnutrition is getting worse. These little children are all badly malnourished. We've also seen cholera in the hospital. What the doctors say is they are absolutely all linked to the gang violence here in Port-au-Prince. Basically, the malnutrition is because the parents can't go to work, they can't earn money, it's too dangerous outside, they can't afford to buy food, and the kids end up in places like this. The cholera, again, it's here all the time, but when the insecurity is high and people are living close together, it spreads everywhere. The sexual violence is on the increase. There's many, many problems, but they all have one common denominator, and that's the crime gangs. The medics and hospital workers risk their lives every day crossing the gang territories to care for their patients. And they are some of the most incredibly vulnerable. If you weren't here, how bad would it be for the community?
Just imagine. Just imagine. There isn't any place where they can go. Everyone comes here. Normally, the poorest people in the country come here.
Attacks on hospitals and staff working in the toughest areas of Port-au-Prince have become common. Threats to Médecins Sans Frontières staff has forced them to suspend work at 2 facilities. In crowded displacement camps, mobile teams do their best to help tens of thousands who are effectively living rough. It means that what is left of the government-run health service, like Le Pays Hospital, are simply overwhelmed by demand.
Well, this is a fully functioning hospital, but it is absolutely stretched to capacity, mainly because 70% of medical facilities in Port-au-Prince have been closed down because of the gangs. They've been attacked, they've been burned, and sometimes the staff in these facilities have been threatened, so they've had to move on. So it means we're now in the only functioning major hospital in the capital of the country.
This epidemic of gang violence that's crushing the light out of Port-au-Prince is a virus that's spreading